Hey, Bruce.
Hey, Jesse.
How's it going?
I'm good. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Houston, Texas.
Come on, man. That's awesome. That's cool.
Well, I'm a big fan. I love Pontypool, obviously. Dreamland was pretty awesome. Can you talk a bit about how you got involved with the project?
Well, yeah, it's like we thought we'd put the band back together, the Pontypool gang. So it was like me, Tony the writer, Stephen McCaddy, and Lisa Hoole, who were all in Pontypool. And, when you have a fun time working with people and things turn out okay, you're like, oh, let's try that again. Or do something again, not the same thing, obviously. But, there's a weird thing I don't think as many people see it, because there's this little tiny blip at the very end of the credits in Pontypool, and it was the original ending actually for Pontypool, and the original ending we were trying to do this thing where the virus leaps from language into reality itself. It was a bit of a high concept notion that we didn't quite earn it, but we thought, well, let's, instead of ending the movie, that we'll put at the end of the credits. So in the thing, it's like Stephen and Lisa are sitting in this sushi bar, and he's dressed up as a tough guy, and she's this kind of glamorous mall, and they have this kind of Raymond Chandler, tough guy talk about stuff, and he's Johnny Deadeyes, and she's Lisa the Killer. So that's probably if there was a seed or a genesis to this project, Dreamland, that would be it.
Excellent. Yeah, I was kind of curious if you guys were like a package deal, or like how did like when they approached you for this gig, or when you were approached, like what did you guys already have this in mind as far as you guys working together, or did that just kind of come together, over time?
Well, we kind of started together. Like, it's funny because we start on a script, and I'm not really a producer. Like, I kind of help with the script, and I kind of support Tony a little bit. So it's a thing that we just collectively kind of got onto paper, and sort of never thought. We thought, well, this is so crazy. We always thought, I don't know if this would ever be made, just because it's so nuts. But weirdly, through all kinds of whatever circumstance or coincidence, this guy shows up, Jesus of Luxembourg, Jesus, but we call him Jesus of Luxembourg, and he's this producer over in Luxembourg. I had no idea even where Luxembourg was. I was like, somewhere in Europe. And he decides that he thinks this is really great, and he would love to support us. So he pulled together, he said, if you want, I'll be your producer, and I'll help you raise the rest of the money. I've got a big chunk, and the only condition is you got to shoot it in sort of Luxembourg. And we're like, great, okay, we can do that. So that's how it sort of came to be. We kind of cooked up this on-paper madness, never really thinking, like, it was just a fun way to hang out and be together, and we thought, well, maybe one day we'll do something like this, but it just seems so insane that part of us, I think all of us, never really thought that this would actually happen. So the fact that it was made at all is a bit of a miracle. So we all turn and bow to Jesus of Luxembourg for this one.
Well, that definitely clears up the timeline. I was kind of curious about that. Keeping along the lines of Pontypool, obviously that film was well received, and the film is mentioned in the trailer, the Dreamland trailer. Is there an added pressure when to deliver a successful work? Like, the film is complete, and then you see, this is from the team of Pontypool. Is it a little daunting, like when you see that in like the advertising materials, or do you kind of embody it?
Well, it's funny. Like, it's more of for me, it's more of a way to point back to something that we're proud of, right? It's sort of, hey, for the people that don't know it, or the people that do. And I suppose there's a little bit of that, but I remember, too, when Pontypool first came out, it took a while for things to kind of click onto.
Yeah.
Because when it first came out, I don't know if maybe it was the way it was sort of marketed or sold, but, the hardcore horror guys were all, sort of disappointed because they didn't have a lot of blood and gore and shit. And then the people that did eventually discover it and love it and embrace it weren't there. They weren't necessarily first in line because they were like, oh, this appears in the marketing anyway to be, more of a slashery thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's funny that it did take, Pontypool took its time to kind of find its people. It was kind of a slow burn, and it's to find its audience and the audience to find that. So, I couldn't be happier that it's gotten, and embraced by this great community of smart filmmaker and film goer people. You always want to, move on. You always want to try, to be better. You want, but you don't want to do the same. So you risk, okay, if we're going to be different, you might lose the people from that world, but maybe gain some other ones. So it's a bit of a trade-off for sure.
That's an interesting point, because I don't think I saw it initially. I think I saw it maybe a year or so after its release. But I'm glad I did. It was a really good ride, and so was Dreamland. I love how different it was, and it was different than Pontypool, but it was also different than a lot of things I'm seeing on television or in the cinema as well. Which kind of leads me to my next question. For people, we're all at home. Like for people that are on the fence about checking it out, or even renting it. Like, how would you sell the film, or like what would you say to them if they had, all they had to do was click buy? What would be your pitch?
Gosh,
they've already made it that far. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right? Yeah. You'd sort of, I would say, you want to invite people. There's a sense of fun to it. It's a kind of a modern day fairy tale. It's a kind of it's like, it works like jazz in a way. It's a simple melody, but it riffs, and it's, to me, it's like putting on not maybe right away your favorite record, but it's like putting on a record. It's about a vibe and a kind of groove that you just don't worry about. Embrace David Byrne's kind of notion of stop making sense and say, okay, I'm going to turn off my brain and just open the little door to the unconscious and go to Dreamland. So it's a kind of it's a dream time. So it's the instructions would be, a little Eurotrash jazz western, and turn off the Logic thing and enjoy the ride. Something like that.
That's perfect. I kind of described it as like a vinyl that you had never listened to. You listen to it all the way through. There's different beats along the way. But film noir is kind of the vibe that I got. I liked the yin and the yang of Johnny and the trumpet player. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the idea of listening to the vinyl or going into the dream world, as you say. Was it always planned for that to be played by the same actor, or was that something that kind of happened, as you guys were writing?
It was from the start. That was the design that Tony, the writer, thought would be the best. He said, I think the trumpet player and the guy should be the same actor, Stephen, who we were writing for. Yeah. And he said the rule is that the audience should know that they're the same actor, the same person, because we'll have different clothes, but we want them to know it's the same person. And the other rule was that nobody comments on it. Nobody says, "Hey, you look like the same guy." And so I don't know where that necessarily comes from. I'm still don't know exactly why, but maybe if you look to like William Burroughs and French surrealism and semiotics and shit, it echoes and shimmers from that land. Yeah. But like you said, I really like your vinyl notion of it, of like, because when you put on a record, as opposed to listening to something on a device, you got your A side and your B side kind of thing. You flip it over and you put on the whole record, and not all records are kind of rock operas, or they're not all meant to be like one story. You get these little stories or little songs big songs, whatever, that share a kind of commonality in its production, I guess, and its artists. But that's it's a really nice way to think of the movie as a kind of a vinyl. You just put it on for the vibe, and each time you might maybe notice something different, or you just love to sink into that noir world.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched the film with my fiance, and we both kind of got different things out of it. But it was interesting to have a discussion with her. Once we finished the film, I kind of got like early Linklater vibes, like some of his like stream of consciousness. But at the same time, it was very connected, which I thought was really cool. Speaking on the Johnny and the trumpet player. If I didn't know any better, I would have thought that Steven had a twin. Like, how were you able to pull off some of those scenes, man? Like, it just looked so seamless and beautiful. So I was just curious, like, if you had maybe like a particular scene or anything you wanted to throw out there.
Well, I wish I could take credit for it, but Steven, I've had the opportunity to work with him many times, and this is why we cast him in this. And I knew that he's an actor that prepares, thinks about wardrobe, thinks about the props in his pocket, thinks about his shoelaces, his hair. So he did his homework, with both those characters, and it was amazing when each, some days they were together, some days it would be just one or the other, but they were totally different characters. And so for me, once I did my casting, I was kind of 95% done. So it was like a bit like pulling up a chair in front of like the actor masterclass and watching the maestro, go. And it was just, I had confidence in him because I knew, we know each other, and there's a, with any good relationship, actor-director, there's always a kind of a foundation of trust, and that I'm the first audience for him, and I encourage him. But I was as amazed as anybody to see the thought and the detail that he put into sort of every aspect of each of those characters. And it, like that scene, there's a scene in the diner, or whether in this bar or whatever, and it has this kind of, you're just watching these two guys that are very different people have this kind of conversation, and it's sort of spellbinding to go, oh, that's the same guy. I think some people that have, not that many, but a few people have thought, oh, that's, like you said, it's his brother or something, or maybe it's somebody that's his cousin. I don't know. Like they were so kind of, there is a seamlessness to it, but it's all to, I salute the acting powers of Steve McCaddy, and he's a guy that's had a lifetime, and he's been doing this since he was like 17. Theater, stage, TV, all, he's just a guy that works constantly. So when we said, hey man, we want you to play the lead in this movie, not only that, but we want you to play the other guy too, he was like, when do we start? He couldn't have been more excited. And he was part, he would step in every once in a while to the scripting, and he'd give us some thoughts about the different characters. And, so he was kind of all the way along, he was part of the design of the movie, which was a real privilege, to have the actor that you're writing for, or the character that you're writing for, have him, so it wasn't somebody that was cast 2 weeks before shooting, and you're like, great, we got that guy, and then there's so little time to prepare. So I think by him being involved for so long, he had time to research Chet Baker, and he had time to read the books about him, and he had time to watch stuff, and he had time to think about, killers in film noir movies. And so he it's a great testament to his skill and his appetite for being a pro,
Yeah, that's awesome. I can really appreciate all of that. Before we go, I wanted to mention that you also direct Creeped Out on Netflix.
Yeah,
it's pretty awesome show. I feel like it's one of those ones that will like I've mentioned it to multiple people, and like a few people have heard of it, but not everybody else has. I think that it'll eventually catch on and like become this huge thing, but because Netflix has a weird way of doing that. I'm not sure what the deal is, but I was curious as what is it a little bit different working with them than on a typical set, or is it a pretty similar experience?
Well, the only difference, to me between sort of television and movies is that in movies I get to, especially if I'm growing the project, I'm the boss, right? So
yeah.
I have the final say. As a television director, you're more, okay, the difference is like when you make a movie, you're throwing the dinner party, right? You're cooking, you're inviting, and you're sitting everybody at the table and you're hosting. On the television show, you're kind of a guest at the table. You've been invited to the table. You might bring a nice dessert or a good bottle of something and hopefully make some witty conversation and not get too loaded and, leave at an appropriate time, right? So, yeah. And then you're invited back. So, it's these two writers from the UK who are really great, and we had, they were awesome guys, and I just thought it was a fantastic idea for a show. And, they might do more. They're still kind of talking about it, and they're not sure. But I just, I've always been a fan of, when I was growing up, of the Twilight Zone and, Outer Limits and these kind of slightly supernatural, stories of strange things. I've always been fascinated and loved those stories. So when this came along, I couldn't have been more excited, and it was just fun because everyone was a different show, a different cast, so each one could be shot in a slightly different way, and it was just a really great experience. So thank you for bringing that up. It's I'll pass on your comments to Rob and Bede, the writers. They're great guys, sort of their baby, and they really did a great job kind of bringing it up. It's more probably known in the UK, but I hope that it kind of more and more people get to know it here.
Yeah, well, see, that's the thing with when I first saw it was released on Netflix, I binged it, and I watched every episode, and I loved every single one. Like you, I grew up, watching those anthologies, Twilight, not necessarily Twilight Zone, but like Are You Afraid of the Dark, Goosebumps, Creep Show, things like that. This, I thought, worked very similarly, and I really liked that aspect of it. But since its release, Netflix has started this thing where it's like it'll display the top 10 items, and it seems like those just tend to blow up, like Tiger King and all the weird shit. But I feel like if they were to do more episodes or like another season, and then it somehow ended up on that top 10, that's what I feel would help it blow up. And I like, I'm not even kidding. I love the vibe. Like, it just reminded me of being a kid again and being scared, and it was just such a cool environment. And I'm really glad that you were involved, because not only do I love Pontypool, but Dreamland was also an awesome ride. And then when I saw you did Creeped Out, I was like, holy shit, man, this is just so cool. But anyway, I wanted to thank you for your time. Here at CineDump, we let the doers know how they're doing. And Bruce, you're doing just fine. I'm relocated to Texas. I'm actually from my family's from Calgary. So.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, man. So I'm up in Canada all the time. Maybe one day we'll cross paths, but until then, keep.
You ever make it to Toronto?
I've flown over it, but I've never actually been there.
Well, Jesse, it would be great to see you in town one of these days, or in Calgary.
Definitely. Yeah, I actually do film production here in Texas, as well as my website. So if I'm ever out in the area, I'll give you a ring. I appreciate your time, sir.